I need a breakdown of the good and the bad in the most recent Alberta budget. If you got all your news from the mainstream media, it would be all bad. And if you got your news from, I guess, the United Conservative Party and their press releases, they would say it's all good. Tell us what you think. Since you are an advocate for the people, what do you think, Kris?
It's good and bad. Do you want to start with the good or do you want to start with the bad?
Let's start with the good.
Okay, there's a lot of good here. So number one, the budget is balanced, which is a great thing to hear. So we're hearing that there's going to be a deficit next door in Saskatchewan. We see a gigantous deficit, like billions of dollars next door in British Columbia. I don't know what they're doing over there. Like, they've lost the plot. So they've gone banana pants in British Columbia when it comes to finances. So the good news is the budget is balanced. It's a little teeny weeny surplus. Like, it's a little baby surplus. It's like $360 million with an M dollars. So, but it's balanced, and we're really happy to see that. There's a big element that I'm super keen about, and all of CTF is, that gets lost a lot of time. They're keeping spending reined in, which is an excellent thing. And they're not just keeping it reined in based on their own parameters. They passed a law so that they must keep spending increases below the rate of inflation plus population growth. Now, what that means in normal people talk is, you know how the price of groceries goes up, price of gas goes up, that's inflation. You know how there's more people moving here, that's your population increase. So it is common sense then for them to turn to the government and say, okay, keep your spending increases apace. Don't go crazy. Don't go too far the other way. Just keep it apace with the rate of inflation plus population growth. They're doing that. And that is really good. Because I went back and did the math, and I did this report where if they had started doing this, Sheila, back in the mid-90s, so imagine, like, Spice Girls are topping the charts, right? I'm just finishing high school. If they had implemented this rule back then and stuck to it all this time, they'd have around $300 billion in the bank. Just from that little teeny rule. I'm not talking resource windfalls, no lottery wins, nothing like that. Just this little teeny spending rule. So this is why we're praising them a lot for keeping this rule. It's just the first year that they're doing it, but they have to keep doing it. So there's that. They also put billions of dollars down on the debt. Thunk, nice payment there. And they put, I think it was $2 billion into the Heritage Savings Fund. So they've balanced the budget, they're keeping spending restrained, they're paying the debt as best we can right now, and we're saving for a rainy day. Those are all excellent.
Tax cut being phased in a couple of years.
This is the bad part.
Okay.
Because when the UCP campaigned in 2023, this was a big promise.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, I think their little tagline thing they used was tax cuts for all Albertans. They didn't say little tiny tax cuts if we think we can afford them like 3.5 years from now.
On the first 60,000.
Exactly. So what this is, for folks who weren't following the election breathlessly, when the UCP were in the middle of their fight against the NDP and Rachel Notley, they promised to create a new lower income tax bracket in Alberta. That can sound boring, but it shouldn't, because it'll save you money if they ever actually do this. So right now, if you move, folks, maybe some people who have moved to the province of Alberta might have noticed this affect their paychecks. If you move from British Columbia, for example, and you make around $100,000, say you're a police officer or a plumber, you're going to notice that your chunk taken out of your paycheck is bigger, actually, in Alberta than it is in BC. And you're going to be like, what the heck? I thought that Alberta was the land of low taxes. Not when it comes to income tax. So the first tax bracket starts from, I think it's $20,000 or whatever it is for your personal exemption. It goes all the way up to $140,000 a year and change. That's a pretty wide lower tax bracket. And it's at 10%. Like, it's not at 5%, it's not at 8%, like, it's a smack in the nose 10%. So what, I almost called her Danielle, what Premier Smith promised was that she was going to reduce that down to 8%. for those making up to $60,000 a year. On average, that would save an average person around $700 per year. Times 2 per household, 2-person working household. You're closing in on 15. Yeah, exactly. Nothing to sneeze at. You're clocking in on about $1,500 a year. So I haven't yet found when they answered this question or when they said they were going to implement this by, but I'm going to, because I'm going through all of the old tapes. But all of the indicators were, this is happening imminently, like soon, now. But now there's 2 things. One, they're saying that it's only going to start at 9%, and it's going to happen 2 years from now, 2026. And we're going to have to wait till 2027 to see it brought down to 8. And here's the kicker. As far as I can tell from these budget documents, and I will stand corrected if I'm wrong, I've looked across where you look at their projected spending. They haven't factored this in the next few years. I know. This is a problem.
Right.
So if you go to the revenue column where they're expecting, how much money are we taking from people or businesses, and you look at personal income tax and you follow along, it's just going up based on population growth. There's no dip there. And if they were really going to do this, there should be a dip there. And I don't see one. So this is the bad. This is the problem. And they need to not screw around with this. They need to put this tax cut.
We've got some borrowing happening too in this budget.
Yeah, this was the weird thing. And I'm going to have to sit down and buy Franco a beer and get him to explain this in economics brain terms, because I do not have an economics degree. Franco has 2. I have 0. But they borrowed money from last quarter, as far as I can understand, which is the 4th quarter. So when they did their budget update back in November, when they announced the $5.5 billion surplus, they borrowed during that quarter to cover off spending for what lands as this budget. Really what the budget is like a massive quarterly update. So it's just kind of a reset button each time. So yeah, there is some spending going on, and that is why you will see some outlets say that, it's an accounting surplus. They put a little asterisk glitter thing next to the word surplus. I didn't, because I think it just confuses people and it jumbles up your language. But to your point, yeah, they were still borrowing money to cover off some expenses, which is also why we're still seeing the debt charge. So that we pay an interest charge on our debt the same way anybody who does if you borrow money. And I think that's costing us around $3.5-ish billion per year.
That's a lot of hospitals.
Sure is. That's 3 hospitals. That is a lot of money. And so this is why it's good that they're saying verbally that they're taking the debt seriously and they want to pay it down, that they want to save money for a rainy day through the Heritage Fund, that they want to keep spending in check. Those are all good things, but they really need to do them. And one thing they said they were going to do is cut taxes for all Albertans. And they haven't done that. They have partially reinstated the fuel tax, so it's now 9 cents a liter instead of 0. Also, I don't think I've mentioned this in another interview. I also noticed in their budget, Sheila, that they're planning on hiking the provincial fuel tax back up all the way to 13 cents on April 1st. So same day that Trudeau nails us with a 2x4 of his carbon tax hike, the Alberta government is planning on bringing that all the way back up. So they're going to add an extra 4 cents per liter of gasoline and diesel back up. Yeah. So again, mixed. I'm trying to be positive with the spending stuff, which they are doing, and we need to praise them for it. But there's some tax increase stuff that we're not happy about here.
Now, I'm glad you touched on the carbon tax, because I think Canadians need to be aware that the clock is ticking on their attempts at affordability and saving money, because the federal government is about to pick our pockets really hard come April 1st, April Fool's Day. Carbon tax is going up. What does that mean for Canadians?
So it means, in a nutshell, that everything gets more expensive. And I just want to pause for a moment. I know that's hard for people to hear. It's terrible out there for a lot of people, and we hear you, okay? We are lucky enough to be able to be commentators and journalists and be able to cover these things. A lot of folks aren't, and they don't have that voice. We hear you. So if you ever hear me laughing about this, it's because I'd otherwise cry. So we have to mock these people. Otherwise, they're going to take themselves too seriously, and they're going to think they can get away with it. So unless there's a miracle, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's carbon tax is going up on April 1st. Now, the reason why that happens on April 1st, people ask me, is because that's when the first year of fiscal starts. That's the beginning of a new fiscal year. So it's going to go up to 17 cents per liter of gasoline, 21 cents per liter of diesel, and I think it's going up to 15 cents per cubic meter of natural gas. That means it's going to cost you more to drive your kids to school. It's going to cost you more to go grab groceries because, of course, there's the cascade of gasoline plus diesel plus farm fuels, all that stuff. And it's going to cost you more to heat your home. And for folks who are thinking, oh, well, I just drive a little itty bitty car, the diesel factor here is a big one.
Yeah.
So every time you eat or when you fill up your coffee cup or any of those things, all of those supplies were brought to you on a truck. That truck is using diesel. The next time you're in a parking lot or at a truck stop, look at that massive cylinder under the driver's side door. They've got 2 tanks on them. These massive cylinders, they hold like more than 1,000 liters. Times that by 21 cents. Every single time.
Yeah.
And that is why we're seeing the knock-on effect on our groceries and all of our supplies. And he's not listening, he being Prime Minister Trudeau, but we commissioned a poll, I think it was through Leger, and it found 69% of Canadians oppose a carbon tax increase. And
those are Trudeau voters, by the way, not just Conservatives. Those are Trudeau voters. Those are NDP voters as well.